will now come to order. Welcome to the November 4th, 2021 meeting of the City of Raleigh Appearance Commission. My name is Corey Bates and I am Chair of the Commission. Raleigh Appearance Commission is a public body appointed by the City Council that exercises both advisory and quasi-judicial functions. Appearance Commission's responsibilities relate to zoning and other land use matters, as well as the visual quality and aesthetic characteristics of the city. We will consider the items on today's agenda in the order in which they appear. The first item on today's agenda are requests for design alternates from the city's Unified Development Ordinance. When hearing design alternates, the Appearance Commission sits as a quasi-judicial body, conducts an evidentiary hearing on the request. That means it's like a court hearing, and state law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this commission must make its decisions. Hearing quasi-judicial matters, the Appearance Commission has 9 regular members and 6 alternate members. The standard applicant must meet to be granted the request as set forth in the UDO. The Commission hears and considers evidence presented at the hearing and applies these standards when making its decision. The Commission must base its decision upon competent material and substantial evidence presented at the hearing. Since today's meeting will be conducted remotely, in addition to the general quasi-judicial rules, today's evidentiary hearing will be conducted in accordance with state statutes that allow for remote evidentiary hearing during the COVID-19 state of emergency. For the convenience of those participating today, I'm going to quickly outline how we conduct today's remote evidentiary hearing. So first of all, the witnesses must be sworn in. Because of the remote format, individuals who sign to speak up, as well as city staff participants, have already signed a written oath form, which will be reaffirmed on the record as they testify today. The participants have also already provided written consent to today's remote meeting. We'll begin with staff presentation. A staff member from the Urban Design Center will introduce the request. Since design alternates are transportation related, a staff member from the Transportation Department is also available to provide any additional information or questions, answer questions if needed. Following staff's presentation, the applicant will then be acknowledged to present their case and witnesses. The Commission will acknowledge the attorney or applicant for each case first, point person for the applicant. Following the applicant, anyone else who signed up to participate in support or opposition to the request will be given the opportunity to speak. The applicant will be given the opportunity for cross-examination as well as rebuttal and a closing statement. When all testimony is complete, we will close the evidentiary hearing. The Commission will then deliberate and vote on the case. Following the meeting, the Commission's decision will be prepared and written findings on fact and conclusion of law. The decision will be incorporated into the meeting and will be adopted at the same time the minutes are adopted. All right, so we will now conduct the evidentiary hearing on today's agenda. First case, evidentiary hearing number 1 is 901 St. Albans Drive, Reserve at North Hills, LLC property owner, is that property owner DA004-2021. The attorney for this case has notified staff they would like to request a continuance until the December 2nd. And I believe Ms. Ashton, the attorney, is present today to make this request on the record. Ms. Ashton, or is she here today?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Jennifer Ashton from Longleaf Law Partners. As the chair stated, we are asking for a continuance until the December 2nd hearing. We're hopeful that this will be the last request for a deferral. We are very close to coming to a resolution with the adjoining property owner and city staff.
Thank you, Ms. Ashton. With no objection, this evidentiary hearing is continued to the Appearance Commission's December 2nd, 2020. Right into evidentiary hearing number 2. It's 320 West South Street. It's DA-0020-2021. As we have seen this project recently, and out of the abundance of caution, I think it would be a good idea to put on the record at the start of this hearing that all the Appearance Commission members hearing this case can be fair and unbiased decision makers in this matter. Not, please let me know. And also would ask that if anyone or if the attorney has any objection to any members participating due to their prior participation in the administrative alternate case.
Oh, I would unmute Worth Mills if he has, just so that he can confirm that for you.
Good afternoon, Chair Bates. This is Worth Mills, Longleaf Law Partners. We don't have any objection to the commission hearing in this case.
Thank you, Worth. Right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over for the staff presentation, and I will swear in the staff. So I believe Carter Pettibone and also Kevin Kidd. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Carter, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Kevin, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you both. And so I'll turn it over to Carter.
Thank you. I'll read the request and then pull up the presentation. The applicant requests the following design alternates: a 115-foot design alternate from UDO section 8.3.5C.3C, which requires driveways accessing up to an 80-foot wide street right-of-way be spaced at least 200 feet apart, center line to center line, in order to construct a parking deck entrance and move-in/trash service area along West Lenore Street that are spaced 85 feet apart, center line to center line. A 23-foot design alternate from the same section, which requires driveways accessing up to 80-foot wide street right-of-way be spaced at least 200 feet apart, center line to center line, in order to construct a parking deck entrance along West South Street, as 177 foot from adjacent properties, driveway center line to center line. A 59-foot design alternate to Raleigh Street Design Manual section 9.5, which requires that driveways be spaced at least 150 feet from a mixed-use street and major street intersection, in order to construct a move-in/trash service area along West Lenore Street, located 91 feet from the West Lenore Street and South Dawson Street intersection. A design alternate to Raleigh Street Design Manual section 9.4.8.c, which requires that on-site parking areas allow vehicles to enter and exit the parking area in a forward motion. A design alternate to UDO section 8.5.5D, which requires parallel parking on both sides of a main street parallel parking street in order to construct road improvements along the south side of West Lenore Street without providing a parallel parking lane. A design alternate to UDO section 8.5.5C, which requires parallel parking on both sides of an avenue, 3-lane parallel parking street in order to construct road improvements along the north side of West South Street without providing parallel parking lane. These design alternates are requested in order to construct a mixed-use building on a 1.16 acre site, zone DX20 urban limited conditional use, and located at 320 and 328 West South Street.
Thank you for that. Okay. Second, I'm trying to get everything organized here. Does the commission have any questions? Staff. Kevin, do you have anything further to add at this point?
Staff's been in detailed discussions with the applicant and the representatives throughout this process. I will note to the commission, items of note are that parallel parking on South Street was explored in detail. The city and the developers agents came to the agreement that that would be difficult to complete with the bike lane needs across that frontage and the necessary buffering and with the available lane width. So basically there wasn't enough room to add parallel parking and have a safe bike passage through there. Lenore Street, I would point out, on the northern side of this use, is slated for long-term the Dorothea Dix bike connector. Got to be coming through on the northern side of Lenore Street. So that brought some ambiguity to what could be done along that frontage. So that is an item of note that we were looking at, but do concur there's some constraints. And if the commission's wondering, you'll see parking along that top of the page there. Long term, that would not be available once the bike connector comes through. I also want to note we've had a lot of discussions with the driveway regarding the reverse maneuverability. We've brought on some of our experts from transportation operations parking and recommended a 60-foot parallel parking for move-in vehicles. And I believe that highlights the staff presentation at this point. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Any questions from the commission at this time? Staff?
Kevin, sorry, just one point of clarification. The first component of this that you highlighted, where you agreed that the parallel parking and bike lane would be challenging. Could you remind me which street that was?
Yes, sir. That would be on South Street.
Okay.
And I should also note the developer has gone the extra mile with the parking on Dawson Street as requested by transportation staff. So staff and operations are appreciative of that section.
Kevin, could you also repeat the point about parallel parking at the move-in area?
Absolutely. So through the different discussions, and I'm sure the developers' agents can go into much more detail as well, we were looking at different aspects and looked at internal loading. It was my understanding that there were some height restrictions that were difficult to overcome with what vehicles that could be fit into the use. And so we were looking at getting a standard commercial loading bay parallel parking of approximately 60 feet. So along
Thank you.
the curb line on Lenore Street, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Kevin, this is Adam. I just had a quick question about the parallel parking on Dawson Street that the clients were including in their design. Actually, I don't know. Is he still there? Looks like he may have cut out. There. Are you there with us, Kevin?
I am. I'm sorry I missed the question.
Okay. I was just wanted to ask about the parallel parking on South Dawson.
Absolutely.
That's a DOT road, and they need approval for that, or do they already have approval for that? Is that something that's that's going to happen, or may happen in the future?
Right. So what we would have to get there is an encroachment agreement. Or, excuse me, it's DOT calls it encroachment. It's separate from what you often hear with our encroachment here, but they're permitting. They have two different types essentially. You've got your encroachments for your work in the right of way, and then you have a standard driveway permit. This would be an encroachment. The parallel parking has been vetted fairly thoroughly, but to your point, yes, there would be DOT permitting required with this.
Go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, and that parking is really kind of in lieu of not being able to put it in other places, or it is also required parking under the city ordinance.
So in working with our transportation operations group, it was very important for this use that we do find some means to, one, get commercial loading and have some additional parking along the frontage. So that was an identified need. It wasn't a required section on Dawson Street. So we worked through that in collaboration.
Okay, thanks.
Kevin, so if I'm understanding this correctly, for Lenore Street, there is not proposed parallel parking on the south side of the street through this design alternate. And then what you're saying is that the parking that exists on the north side of the street will go away if and when there's a bike facility.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. The applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of their request. As a reminder to applicants, any evidence and arguments must focus on the applicable standards. Turn this over to Worth Mills, the attorney, to proceed with your presentation, and just a reminder that any witnesses that you have will need to be sworn in before they testify. I'm happy to do that whenever necessary.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Commission. This is Worth Mills with Longleaf Law Partners on behalf of the property owner and developer of 320 and 328 West South Street. Before we begin, just like to make the request that all of the materials that we have presented and submitted be entered into the record today.
Thank you.
And if you could go to slide 2, please. So great, thank you. So again, as Mr. Pettibone mentioned, we have requested 6 design alternates to facilitate the development of a mixed-use development ranging from 7 to 20 stories. This commission has already seen some of these slides from our administrative alternate requests, but the next few will provide just a quick recap. So the rendering here shows the 2 buildings looking northwest from West South Street and the South Dawson Street intersection. The building closest to the intersection is proposed for 20 stories. The tan shaded building there behind it is proposed for 7 stories. Next slide. This rendering here shows the same street view from Dawson and South Street. So again, you can see the 20-story building with the 7-story building located behind it. Next slide. And again, here we have the view from South Street. You have the parking garage entrance on the left side of the 7-story building. Next slide. And then here is a view from West Lenore Street. Again, parking garage entrance located in the center of the 7-story building and the move-in area located within that same building closer to the left side where the 2 buildings meet. Next slide, please. So here is an overhead view of the site layout across these 2 parcels. The notes there identify the 6 design alternates before you today. Along West South Street, we are requesting a design alternate for driveway spacing between the adjacent property's driveway and our proposed parking deck entrance. And we are requesting a design alternate to exempt the property from providing parallel parking lanes across that frontage. And then along West Lenore Street, we have 4 design alternates. We have an exemption to not provide parallel parking along the Lenore Street frontage, driveway spacing requirement between the proposed parking deck entrance and the move-in area, a design alternate to permit move-in trucks to back into the move-in area, and lastly, a design alternate to locate the move-in area within 150 feet of the South Dawson Street intersection. What I'm going to do is go kind of focus on one street at a time and lay out each request individually, and then after that we'll be available for questions and discussion. Next slide, please. So first, we are requesting a 23-foot design alternate to the 200-foot driveway spacing requirement to construct the parking deck entrance 177 feet from the adjacent property's existing driveway. The intent of Article 8.3 is to provide a well-connected street network that is safe for both vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Locating the parking deck entrance at the western edge of this site accomplishes both of these goals. So first, it reduces the chances of traffic accidents from other vehicles turning onto West South Street from Dawson Street. We have tried to locate this as far away from that intersection as we possibly can to mitigate any of those safety concerns. And secondly, by locating it this far west on the site, it allows the driveway from the parking deck to be full movement, meaning that cars could turn left or right onto West South Street. Additionally, the adjacent property entrance is for a storage facility, which has infrequent trips in and out of that property. This request also does not increase congestion or compromise safety. As I mentioned, given the infrequency of use from the other driveway, coupled with the distance from the Dawson Street intersection, this is the safest and most efficient location for this parking deck entrance. The request does not conflict with any City of Raleigh roadway projects, and the request is reasonable given the alternative locations for this parking deck entrance. Locating the entrance away from the Dawson Street intersection reduces the probability for traffic accidents from people turning off of the busy thoroughfare that is South Dawson Street. Second is a design alternate to exempt the development from constructing a parallel parking lane along its South Street frontage. As Mr. Kidd pointed out, this portion of West South Street was part of a transportation improvement program, or TIP, project for the city a few years ago. During that project, the city opted not to put in parallel parking lanes. As Kevin mentioned, the transportation department advised us not to include parallel parking lanes, but we still must seek relief from this commission to do so. It's important to note as well that the existing back of curb width meets the minimum requirements for an Avenue 3-lane parallel parking street section today. So if the city ultimately decided to include a parallel parking lane, we could do so without having to dedicate additional right-of-way. Next slide, please. So now we'll move on to the Lenore Street requests. First is a design alternate to request exemption from constructing a parallel parking lane along the Lenore Street frontage as well. Like the previous request, Transportation Department has recommended no parallel parking lanes along Lenore Street. This street is in the planning stages for the Dix Park East-West connector. And like South Street, this project is providing the ultimate right-of-way and back of curb widths for this street section. So if changes do need to be made, the city has the ability to do so within the existing right-of-way. The second request on Lenore Street is a 115-foot design alternate request to locate the West South Street parking deck entrance 85 feet from the proposed move-in area. Again, the intent of Article 8.3 is to provide a safe and well-connected street network. This South Street parking deck entrance gives tenants and guests the ability to enter, exit onto South Street or Lenore Street, meaning if folks need to go either way, we've given them the opportunity to do so and can turn left or right out of there. And while the move-in area is spaced only 85 feet from the parking deck entrance, that move-in area is used with much less frequency than a typical driveway would be. Additionally, the parking deck entrance is located near the western edge of the site, like the entrance on West South Street, to minimize those traffic issues from the Dawson Street intersection. This request does not create congestion or compromise safety because of the functionality of the move-in area. As I mentioned, the infrequency with which it would be used creates a situation where two driveways could be spaced closer than 200 feet apart without creating those types of safety hazards. And as I mentioned, locating the parking deck away from the intersection reduces that potential for traffic incidents from Dawson Street. The driveway spacing request does not conflict with any city roadway projects. And lastly, this request is reasonable given the lack of cars that would be entering, exiting the move-in area on any given day. Like the driveway spacing request on South Street, driveways should be able to be spaced less than 200 feet apart if one of those driveways is being used sporadically. The third request on Lenore Street is a 59-foot design alternate to the Raleigh Street Design Manual so that the project can locate the move-in area at 91 feet from the West Lenore Street and South Dawson Street intersection. This request is consistent with the intent of the manual, which is to provide an adequate and well-connected street network. Because that move-in area is, again, used much less frequently than a site's primary access point. I'll note that this site has approximately 275 feet of frontage along Lenore, which would make it impossible to meet both of the driveway spacing and the intersection spacing requirements for the parking deck in the move-in area. And so we have tried to minimize each of the potential negative effects from both of those requests. Locating the move-in area rather than the parking deck entrance closer to the intersection allows for greater mobility for entering and exiting the parking deck, and should reduce the safety concerns near the South Dawson Street intersection. The nature of this move-in area should create less traffic congestion than a typical parking deck entrance or a typical driveway would if located in the same place. This request would not create additional maintenance responsibilities for the city, nor would it adversely impact stormwater collection. And as mentioned, the request is reasonable given the move-in area's low frequency of use as compared to a typical driveway or parking deck entrance. And lastly, a design alternate request to the street manual in order to allow move-in vehicles to back into the move-in area. If you go to the last slide, please, we've got an exhibit that highlights the movement and the type of truck that could be used there. So this request, again, meets the intent of the manual's safety goal by limiting the size of the truck that can enter and exit the move-in area. The move-in door's height permits up to a 10-foot tall moving box truck, which is a common size for a typical 2-bedroom unit. You're not going to see 18-wheelers or semis backing into this space. Again, the request does not increase congestion or safety concerns because it limits the movement of backing into the space rather than backing out. The way that the move-in area is set up, if you were to pull into the move-in area head-on, you would not be able to properly use the unloading area, which again incentivizes movers to back in as opposed to backing out. So the moving truck drivers will have full vision when entering back onto Lenore Street. This request does not create additional maintenance responsibilities for the city, nor would it impact stormwater collection. And lastly, this request is reasonable given the alternative, which would be to create a full movement space for the moving truck underneath the building. If we were to do that, we would be reducing the available ground floor retail space along both Lenore and Dawson streets, and we would be detracting from that street level activation that is desired for these downtown mixed-use developments. That is the presentation that we have today. I will note that we have a handful of other witnesses available to answer questions. We have Victoria Coates and Natalie Mason representing the owner and developer, Reinald Stevenson from Ramey Kemp, and Ken Thompson from J. Davis Architects. We appreciate your time and your consideration, and we are happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Worth. Any questions for the applicant?
I just had a question. You were stating that with the picture of the vehicles that would be able to go in as far as to the loading area. Is that going to be documented, like for the tenants beforehand? Because, you know, say for instance, if you got someone coming from out of town, they may have like a larger truck, like a box truck, or something like that, like a 26-foot box truck, which may not, you know, from your diagram, it's not going to fit in there. So is that going to be documented for tenants to know beforehand? So that way you don't have a box truck or a semi sitting out, you know, in front of this loading area?
And thank you for the question. I'd say when it comes to leasing agreements and questions regarding scheduling move-ins, I think Ms. Coates would be the most appropriate to answer those questions about their operations.
Hey, this is Victoria Coates. So regarding your question on move-in.
Victoria, if you would go ahead and state your name and address in relationship to the project, I'll go ahead and confirm your oath.
Sure. Victoria Coates, 525 Sleepy Hollow Road, Richmond, Virginia, on behalf of the owner/applicant.
Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, proceed.
Okay, so regarding the question on the size of a moving truck, the move-in door's height only permits, right now the plan is for it to only to permit a 10-foot tall moving box truck, which is kind of the standard truck that you would see for a 2-bedroom unit. You won't see any sort of like large trucks moving in here. And the plan is to have tenants schedule their move-ins ahead of time and perhaps sign like a form. So we would be able to kind of have those restrictions noted on the form when they're scheduling their move-in time in advance.
Yeah, because what I was saying is like, because a lot of times if they hire a moving company, most moving companies' trucks are going to be larger than that. Like the standard one you were talking about, the 10-foot one, that's like a U-Haul truck that an individual might, have on their own. But like, say for instance, if they're hiring a company, and is that going to be something that's going to be relayed to the company that they have to use a smaller vehicle? Because in that particular area, you don't want a large truck sitting there, congesting up that area. Because like, say for instance, if there's something going on with the Red Hat Theater as well at that particular time, it's going to be a mess down there.
Right. So we would make it clear to the tenants when they were moving in that they would have to coordinate with the moving company, that there are restrictions on the size of truck that's available to kind of fit into that area. And that would be on a form that the tenant would be responsible for kind of signing and acknowledging when they're scheduling their date to move in.
Bernard, would you also put a condition on there that they would have to approach from the west and they couldn't approach from the east to back in, because then they're cutting across 2 lanes of traffic?
Would definitely have a condition for that.
Yeah, the west approach is what we would.
And the separation between those 2 lanes, is that just striping? Can't tell if it's striping or if it's hardscape.
Sorry, between what 2 lanes?
Between the westbound and eastbound lane, as you get closer to Dawson Street, there's a bulb.
Yes, I believe that is just striping, but we can double check.
And then I've got a question. I'm not sure if it's for the applicant or for Kevin, but the distance from the center line to back of curb is the same as what's required for the Main Street parallel parking. So it's wide enough to accommodate parallel parking. Why wouldn't we do parallel parking along this frontage?
Mr. Roberts, is that for staff?
Whoever is able to answer the question. I don't know if that's you, Kevin, or them.
Okay. If Worth doesn't have any objection, I can answer.
Go ahead, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay. So what we would have here is, by standard practice, we would have, for lack of a better term, the recessed parking. So you'd have a reduced width sidewalk to some degree. So if you envision, say, Hillsborough Street, where we've had some of our newer developments come through, where the parking is off the beaten path, if you will, the travel lane. So that's the general view here. The other thing with this lane that we're looking at, this is a signalized intersection. And so we want to have clear maneuverability through that intersection. So you wouldn't want parking to take up more than, say, a 10-foot travel lane at minimum. So that's what staff's looking at if we're not moving the curb. Do we have?
Lost you, Kevin. See you, but we can't hear you. Is Kevin unmuted from our end? we can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you, so we'll give that a minute. While he's trying to reconnect here, we are taking this a little bit out of order, and I'll just go ahead and say that no additional participants are signed up to speak in support, or opponents signed up to speak as well. So, you know, I feel comfortable going and ask questions now, but we'll also open it back up here in a second for applicant for his closing statements if needed.
I had one quick question for probably Virginia, if she's still there. Have you all planned anything in your documentation about facilitating the vehicles, having someone to guide traffic, stop traffic, manage traffic when these moving vehicles are performing their back ends?
I believe that's for Victoria, right?
Yeah, sorry, was that Victoria? I thought it was Virginia.
So she might be muted right now. I just got the moderator, it looks like his WebEx crashed and he's rejoining right now, and Kevin Kidd's also trying to get back in. So I don't know if she has the ability to unmute herself until we get him back in. And apparently he's back in and he's made the host again. I'm not sure how to do that. And Carter, do you know how to do that?
Working on it right now.
Okay. Learning on the fly.
Yeah, let's give it a minute here.
I also had that same question that Chris asked, and then I've got another one when Adam's done as well.
Hi, this is Victoria. Can you hear me?
Yeah, she's unmuted now.
Great.
So as it relates to potential assistance with traffic while move-ins are going on, we would be open to having one of our employees on site there to assist with traffic while move-ins are kind of going on.
Great. Will, did you have an additional question, follow-up question?
Yeah, what's kind of the arrangement, internally as far as the retail space? Our patrons of that space going to be allowed to use the parking deck. Is there capacity in the deck to support that retail space? Can you kind of explain that as it relates to the lack thereof of parallel parking?
Sure. So right now our parking structure is planned to support both the retail and residential. The plan is for the first floor and a portion of the second floor to be open to the public for retail, and then there will be kind of a separate guarded entry for residents that they'll have to fob in to kind of go up to those higher levels of the garage. So there will be parking provided in the garage for retail.
And approximately how many spaces is that? Approximately how much, of retail space is there, not including the lobby?
I would have to pull that up. If you could give me a minute, I could get back to you on that. I don't know if there are any other questions or anything kind of while I pull that up.
Any other questions from the commission while Victoria's looking that up?
Hey, this is Matt with City Planning. I'm back in as host. Just as a matter of housekeeping, Victoria, can you tell me if you're able to mute and unmute yourself right now?
Sure, I'm unmuted right now. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you mute yourself?
Yes, I'll try that right now.
Okay. All right, good. I see that you're muted. So I think once I've unmuted you, you have control over your microphone. But if I remute you, you can't unmute yourself. So I won't mute you again.
Okay, sounds good.
Is the commission able to hear my mic at this point?
Yeah, we can hear you, Kevin.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Kevin, was there anything that you wanted to continue saying as you were talking and we lost you?
I'm honestly trying to recall where we were at that point. We were talking a little bit about the
We were
driveway
talking about the
lane.
yeah, and the distance center line to back of curb is 20.5 feet, which is the typical for the main street parallel parking, and why we wouldn't do parallel parking.
Right, and going back to the striping question, and I can confirm it is striping at the intersection. Your lane narrows to such a point that you would have to push the curb back to make that fit. So anything below 10-foot lane would be concerning from an operational standpoint.
Chris might have a follow-up. I've got a follow-up question to that, which is, so that makes sense for the closest portion to the intersection. What about the remainder of the frontage?
Looks like he's having connection issues again. I mean, to me, it seems like maybe the entrance into that loading area and the entrance into the deck are too close to each other and you wouldn't be able to fit it in. And maybe that's the same case west of the deck entry. But I think it's nice that you've at least got that width for, you know, if there's a move-in truck that maybe they're not ready, they've at least got the room to pull off on to the side of the road and still have the room for cars to get past it with that width of street.
Right. There is some availability for parking, and in particular, if we were having a space further back. I do understand that with what they're looking at, the driveway for the entry to the parking deck is relatively fixed. But where we start running out of room is beyond where we're talking about a 60-foot parallel parking space. So as you approach that intersection where the bulb starts to become present, we wouldn't want parking there. But there is room for some parking.
My concern is this site is very unsupported from a parking perspective on the street grid. And even a couple of spaces picked up there could be really meaningful to support that space.
Kevin, is there parallel parking further to the west in front of the storage building? Will is saying yes.
Yes, there is. There's some parking along that section. It's on street. That's your question, and I'm going from memory here. I believe we have 14 or 16-foot sidewalks there with the full width.
Kevin, somewhat related question. I'm looking at the truck turn template that they have for the back end of the moving vehicles, and it seems like a 32-foot curb cut isn't necessary for that. I'm trying to figure out why that curb cut is 32 feet, and if it was smaller, could that accommodate some parking or create some space for something else?
Are we talking specifically about the driveway in question for the move-in?
Yes.
Right. I presume they're looking at that in more of a commercial bordering on industrial with something along this commercial mixed use. We often see more in the line of 24 feet. Where we also are sensitive is the larger the radii on the driveway are, the lesser the effective sidewalk width is, because you're having to pull that back. So those are the two things we really look for in a downtown perspective. You may see we've tried to work with some of that on some of our most recent towers downtown. 301 Hillsborough Street, they have smaller radii to try to address some of that as well.
Worth or Victoria, are we showing that the move-in truck would be completely within the building proper while unloading?
Yes, the goal would be for the truck to be fully in the dock area.
You provided any kind of warning signals or anything for pedestrian move?
We have discussed potentially having like a change in sidewalk materiality just to signal to a pedestrian that there, something could potentially be going on there.
Is that the same for all three of the entrances into the building?
The two into the parking deck as well.
Not as planned currently, but we could look into that for all three potentially.
Corey, can I say real quickly that the other two people signed up with the applicant's case have sent a message and requested, it looks like they want to be unmuted, so I'm not sure if they have something to add. I defer to Worth, and if you want to unmute them, just double check.
Yeah, if you tell me who they are, I can unmute them.
Oh, sure.
So we have Natalie Mason, Reinald Stevenson, and Ken Wilson also signed up to speak.
That's correct.
All right, they're all unmuted.
Yeah, if any of you would like to speak, feel free to just state your name and your address, relationship to the case, and I'll go ahead and confirm your oath.
Ken Thompson, 510 South Wilmington Street, Raleigh 27601.
And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Natalie Mason, 305 Lock Lane, Richmond, Virginia.
Natalie, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I think Victoria answered questions so far, but I think Ken and I just want to make sure we were unmuted in case something else came up.
Thank you.
So,
Could you unmute Reinald as well?
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now, Corey?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Reinald Stevenson with Ramey Kemp Associates, 5808 Farrington Place, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27609.
Great. Reinald, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you.
Adam, I was wondering about that 32-foot wide curb cut as well, and I just realized, so there's a trash area right next to the move-in, which I didn't realize. So is the intent that the trash will be picked up, that the trash trucks will drive across the sidewalk to pick up a trash container, a dumpster?
No, the trucks will not. We have a will serve letter from a vendor. The room there is not designed for a truck to access it, and the trash will be wheeled out to the truck at the time of pickup.
So the curb cut is centered in a way that seems like it's designed for the truck to back into that trash area.
But the door is not. The door in the building is the same size as what we're looking at for that box van. And, there'll be front load forks to lift the containers up into the truck.
So would the truck drive head in across the sidewalk, pick up the container, dump it, and then back out onto Lenore Street?
No, sir. There's no intention for the truck to access the sidewalk. As I said, we have a will serve letter from the vendor that states that as well.
So are they rolling those, the trash bins or the dumpster, whatever that is, down
That's
that
correct.
curb cut onto the street?
Yes,
Is that why that curb cut is so wide?
correct.
Gotcha.
So could they theoretically roll the trash bin down the curb cut that was made, the 25 foot-ish curb cut that would be made for the move-in vehicle?
It could theoretically, yes. Kind of the reason, the requests are very specific in, the dimension that you're requesting a variance on. So, in order to accommodate a driveway that would serve the move-in and the rollout, I put the center line between the two doors and did the dimension from the intersection at that point.
And I think another, and Ken, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I think another thing is, we would like to make that width of the curb cut as narrow as possible, but asking for the full 32 because precisely where our loading dock door may shift a foot or two right or left, we're still perfectly sizing our multifamily and retail trash rooms. So, in the event that the walls shift a couple feet left or right, we wanted to make sure we had asked for the appropriate curb cut width so that we could, even if we can do a smaller curb cut width, we might shift it left or right a foot or two. So asking for that 32 will enable us to have a little flexibility since we're still this early in the design process.
That would be correct. There's some flexibility because the nature of the request has to be so specific.
I don't have any more questions.
Questions from the commission?
Did I think it was Victoria, did you have a chance to check that math on the parking spaces and the amount of retail space?
Yes. So the parking garage as planned right now has 437 parking spaces over 6 stories. There is about 8,400 square feet of retail. So again, we're still trying to figure out the exact divide between the residential and the retail, but the plan is for the first story and potentially part of the second story. The first story has a couple dozen spaces on it to be totally available to the public for that retail.
So approximately, I guess I could do the math, but approximately how many spaces does that represent?
So it's about 70 spaces that are across the first floor and a half. So not all of that obviously is can be designated for retail, but certainly some portion of that first floor.
I've got a question for Kevin, if Kevin's still on.
Yes, sir.
So is the question with the design alternate with regards to the parallel parking, is it a question of them having to provide the bump out configuration on Lenore where it does neck down to below, 10 foot in spacing? So the question I'm trying to get to is if it were built as pictured here, that would include there from being street parking. It's just the question of whether or not they have to provide the additional infrastructure as a part of the design. You get what I'm trying to ask?
Yeah, I do. Well, with the series of driveways in proximity to the intersection, on-street parking becomes infeasible to a large degree. If you're familiar with this section of Lenore Street, it is on a rise, so you're looking uphill. You've got the stoplight from Red Hat that comes across, the cars come through. Sight distance is very important there. That's why if we're going to do parking, a recessed parallel parking section would be the way to go. So there is room for some parking if recessed in my mind. The city typically, and ran into a case today, doesn't like necessarily striping out for commercial loading and unloading because it's wider than your traditional passenger park. So when you're talking about a moving truck or whoever is going to sit here that takes up an excessive amount of lane, that becomes problematic. So we want that recess. But with this amount of driveways, it would be problematic to get more than a space or two.
Okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
But there isn't anything, if this moved forward exactly as is, separately from this, there's nothing that would preclude parking from potentially coming back and saying, these are going to be on-street parking in these areas that are, beyond the 10 foot from the curb cuts, et cetera.
Right. And where I can't give you 100% precision on this is due to the layout of that bike connector on the north side. So depending if it's 10 foot, 12 foot, it gets into our overall width of our street section, identifying how that works. So things could shift where it makes it even more problematic to get on-street parking as shown.
Nope, I think that makes total sense. So thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions from the commission? Go ahead and open it back up to Worth if you have any closing statements, if you need. It's done.
Yes, thank you. I'll conclude by saying that given the limited frontage that we have both on Lenore and South to make these entrances work, we have arranged them in a way that I think provides for both an efficient layout to move tenants and guests throughout the property onto either Lenore Street or South Street. And we've also done it in a way that should minimize safety impacts with locating both of our parking deck entrances away from the South Street, Lenore Street, Dawson Street intersections, and by locating the move-in area closer to the Lenore Street, Dawson Street intersection, given the infrequency of use. We have, agreed, at least verbally, to a handful of conditions that this commission has requested, making the project, even safer, more reasonable, and we ask that this commission approve these 6 requests. Thank you.
Thank you, Worth. Staff have anything further to add?
I do not. Thank you.
No, I mean, I agree with them, like with the space permitted. I think, they've done a good job with it. So I'm good with it.
Board, commission have any other questions for the commission before we go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing? Deliberate.
I guess my only other question for Kevin would be, do you have any concern over the safety here with the curb cut for the move-in being so close to the intersection?
So there's an unknown here in that you don't know how many vehicles are coming, and I do respect the developer with, they know their business, so I'm not questioning that in any way. It's just gauging human behavior as a driver and where they're going to park and how we can enforce it in the time to enforce our ordinance here. So the key thing for transportation is to maintain clear sight lines, adequate sight distance, and clear lanes. So I don't want to speak to any specific safety concerns, but the maneuvering would need to be well placed. And coming in from the west, that's something that the developer can indicate would be helpful to some degree for those. So I hope that answers your question.
Kevin, can I ask one more quick question related to that? We had talked about this 32-foot curb cut for what looks like is, kind of only needs to be 25, 26 feet of space centered on the move-in. And, if we were to ask for it to be smaller, would that make things easier, not have any effect, or make things worse in your opinion?
I'll say this. There are similar uses from a residential standard, maybe not to this density meaning floors, where there's rollout dumpsters. And listening to Mr. Thompson speak, I believe that's what we're talking about. Those are traditionally located where there's on-street parking, and the areas in between the no parking signs are typically where these dumpsters are rolled out. Some of you may be familiar with the Lincoln Apartments downtown at Target, Bloodworth in the east. That's an example. So I can appreciate the need to have them be able to roll out. It's the protection of that through lane that we would want to make sure is appropriately mitigated and addressed. So if they're indicating they need this driveway width for the dumpsters at 32 feet, it would be good to get more information. But I hope that gets to the answer to the question.
So this goes a little bit contradictory to what my thought was, which was that the city required that trash be located behind the curb. You're saying that they could be located within the street? I mean, typically they're located behind the curb, and then a truck would come and pick them up, which would make
Right.
point to have a wider rollout area.
Yeah, and sorry to talk over you. So, and maybe it would be good to call in Mr. Thompson again to get a better idea on the type of, but I'm not picturing your traditional rollout carts that townhomes, residential properties are able to wheel out on their own. I'm seeing dumpsters that aren't like what you see behind your larger big box retailers, but something that's still mobile and on wheels, that there are service companies that do pick those up in the gutter line.
And that's okay with staff being in the gutter line?
It's been entertained on a case-by-case basis. So the Lincoln Apartments is one where there's on-street parking, and there was pretty much protected area between the no parking signs. It's pretty much mid-block. I want to say Bloodworth Street.
Thank you. Ken, do you have anything further to add to that? Mr. Thompson?
I believe you asked me the question, correct, Chair?
That's right. Yep.
Okay. I'm just having, you're the only microphone I'm having a hard time hearing. So in our will serve letter with the vendor, the slope of the street was discussed. So there is no intention at this time to store the carts outside prior to pickup. No, and there is no intention to have them stored out in the street if they were stored waiting for pickup. We do have a level area outside some transformers to the west that was necessary for them to be stored outside, but the intent with the letter and us, the work we did with the vendor, is to keep it all interior until the actual pickup time. To be honest, we don't want to look like some of the other projects around town on trash day.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
So that's great that you're being thoughtful about that. Can you just lay out really clearly what you all are envisioning as the waste management plan as it relates to the streetscape, how that would run and what it would look like, what the painters are like, when the pickup would be, how the pickup would happen?
Because I thought we went over that already, but So the containers would be stored in the trash room until the day of pickup and actually the time of pickup. And they would be rolled out one at a time to the truck. You know, we do have some significant topography there that would prevent us storing them outside. Heaven forbid one of the brakes or something, or somebody decided to take one of the brakes off, it would roll out into traffic in the intersection. So that is what we worked out with the vendor at this point.
Right. Okay. So I'm just not clear why the curb cut for those when you could bring them right out where to the move-in area curb cut, right?
As again, we placed the largest one allowed there by code.
Okay.
During SPR, it will be revisited again and you know, sized properly.
Okay.
I guess you could look at it as we didn't want to be misleading today and come in with a 12-foot, and then during SPR we end up having a 25 or 26, and you know, somebody on the commission, you know, came back to question what happened.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, Adam, and hopefully the width of that curb cut can be reduced. And sorry for peppering you guys with questions and comments about this, but this is an extremely high visibility area of town, and it's going to be even more so in the years to come, as I'm sure you know. And so we just want to make sure that we can do as much as possible to make the area look as best as it possibly can, and minimizing curb cuts would help with that, both number of and width of.
Yeah, I totally agree, Chris. And if we're talking about changing the materiality of the sidewalk to indicate circulation, I don't want to do that. I want to do that in line with a curb cut that goes along with vehicle circulation and not something that isn't vehicle circulation. And so it just kind of wanted to make sense. And so it sounds like you all are kind of on board with that, and just this is more of a regulatory strategy. So thank you for clarifying.
All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and close the evidentiary hearing. I'm going to go ahead and open it for board deliberations. As you've heard, we have 6 design alternates that are before us. We've been focusing on these pretty hard, but I think all 6 of them were, work did a good job at kind of outlining what their requests are. What I'm hearing from the commission is that, you know, maybe the potential of, you know, maybe reducing the curb cut width at the back end area could be a possibility, as well as some change in color or texture or something at the curb cuts.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to, in all 3 of the locations where you're coming across the pedestrian circulation, have a clear change in materiality to indicate that vehicles move through those spaces, and that curb cut just relates to a vehicle circulation. The width should be associated with the vehicle circulation, so that change in materiality represents the vehicle circulation and not dumpster access or something like that that will be wheeled down.
As you guys discussed, I have been pulling some conditions that you guys used previously that were similar and getting that language ready. So I do have something for those ones. What you have said in the past is that the project will provide a change in material type or color for the portion of the sidewalk that abuts, and then you list out the individual driveways. So if you wanted to use that language and then say the parking deck driveway located off of West Lenoir, the move-in driveway off West Lenoir, and the parking deck driveway located off West South Street.
That sounds good to me. Is there a way to say to encourage that the driveway cuts are only as wide as necessary for vehicle circulation, or something like that.
Yes.
Kind of leave
So
it up to staff to figure out with the applicant during SPR.
yes, I would. I can definitely write that condition for you. I would ask Kevin Kidd if he would comment on how that would be applied at time of staff review to make sure that it's something that's clear enough that staff can apply.
Right. But I believe there's enough flexibility in the code where I could have them maximize this driveway to a width no more than 24 feet.
Great.
If that's something the commission wants to entertain, but obviously just mentioning from the Raleigh Street Design Manual.
Yeah, obviously we don't, I think the commission is making it clear that, you know, they don't want to see this any wider than it needs to be. I mean, it needs to work. We're totally for that. But we don't need the extra width where it could pose potential problems with somebody pulling in there to pick somebody up and hanging out there, or another truck backing in there side by side and blocking the sidewalk. I mean, there's lots of reasons. But I think trying to minimize that but still make it workable, I think, is key.
If appropriate, may I ask one question on the material type, thinking forward towards their ASR, that's okay? So when specifying certain materials, it could get into the realm of encroachment agreements where the city wouldn't be the one maintaining that. So I did just want to mention that aspect in your deliberations.
The way it reads now is just, it says a change in material type or color, which is pretty open. And Kevin, I mean, and the other one too, if you wanted to do about the driveway width, I've typed up one here, the driveway width for the driveway located off of West Lenore Street. We'll say for the move-in driveway located off of West Lenore shall be no wider than necessary to allow for sufficient vehicle movement into and out of the driveway. Does that give you what you need? But we also want to make sure that we're not. What's the minimum required from the UDO? 24 feet?
Well, could go as little as 20. One thing, if it satisfies the commission, that we could look at where, with the turning radius, where the wheelbase falls. Is it a maintenance issue if it's near too much, and leave that? But if I understand the condition and what my charge would be to look into it. So however the commission feels to move forward, as an engineer, it always helps to know a number that you're looking for, because reasonable minds can differ on what the driveway width can be. So it's just something the commission may wish to look at, but I feel with certainty that we could hold them to 24 feet. And if the commission wants something less than that, we can certainly look at where the wheel path falls, so not to increase maintenance on curb lines and whatnot.
What if I just added and to comply with the UDO and RSD at Raleigh Street Design Manual?
That satisfies the commission. I can follow that.
Sounds like we might need to add a maximum width of 24 feet though, in order for that to be enforceable.
Yeah.
Is that so? Okay,
Maximum.
is that what you guys want to say? Is no more than 24 feet? I was making sure that it was clear that they could have as much room as they needed to make their turns and to be of sufficient width. But you guys tell me how you want it to say.
I think the maximum of 24 feet with the, as Kevin was saying about the width of the wheel turning radius, that it doesn't become a maintenance. So it could be modified slightly if it becomes a, if they think it's looking at the wheel pattern, then it could become a maintenance problem. And they have a little bit of play to make that a foot wider, or if necessary. I just don't want to lock something into 24 feet and then find out that, you know, now it's going to cause a maintenance problem because their wheels are going over the curb. It, as we're pondering that, what are other people's thoughts on the rest of the, you know, non-alternates? We have a couple of parallel parking design alternates that sounds like they've been in agreement between this development and the city. So those seem pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, I agree, Corey. I think, you know, where there's, you know, an exception there in the case of a future bike lane, I think that makes sense.
I want to ask, you know, Will, I know that you had some questions about parking. I just want to make sure that you feel comfortable with, you know, there's a reduced amount of on-street parking there, of course.
Sure. To just unpack that a bit into the different components, I think the South Street one makes total sense. There's already the existing bicycle facility there. There's the median in the middle. Makes total sense. And as far as the placement of the parking garage entrances, that also seems totally straightforward. I like the addition of the parallel parking on Dawson Street. I think that actually is going to really make that pedestrian space feel much safer and comfortable. So that's awesome. They were able to find 5 spaces there. And maybe that'll also help slow down traffic a bit on that street because, you know, it's a slingshot right there. Lenore Street is where I think in what, you know, Kevin and I were just discussing there, I think I'm on board with it as it's proposed, where it's just, it doesn't make sense for them to have to do a carve out if how it will also support parallel parking. And then there's the unknown of the bicycle facility. Say all that. And then, you know, I will say too, I am concerned at the amount of retail space being supported by, you know, parking in the area, and having street parking is way more valuable than having, you know, deck parking when it comes to convenience for retail and supporting that. So one space on the street is worth more than one in the parking deck. And I know they're early enough in design that they can't really commit to, you know, how much of that deck is going to be accessible for that retail to support it. But that's definitely something of note and of, you know, some degree of concern of just wanting that space to be successful.
Yeah, and I'd say building off of what you just said, Will, I mean, I think the street section and having the 20.5 feet from center line to back of curb with whatever development comes along and is developed to the west, you know, gives the city the ability to come along and add parallel parking, you know, as close to the entrance into the deck as they feel comfortable in the future. So I'm in support. If we can add the conditions from what Bernard was talking about too, with the deliveries, I would be in support of all of these.
The only thing I would just ask the group is just, you know, my uncomfortability here as far as the deck and, you know, having that support the retail space. There's nothing to say that at this moment that it has to, you know, be a portion of that be accessible for the retail space. And not to say that they, you know, wouldn't provide that for the space, but if that's provided in a limited capacity, that's going to, you know, handicap this particular retail base for the life of the existence of this product.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because there are some precedents of retail along McDowell, you know, a similar busy street and not as much parking, and just to see it's, you know, how that does as well. But, you know, I think that for us, it's also there, you know, the decision that what they want to put out there and how successful, but I think like as a city, we want that to be used and used well.
So, Will, I just want to be clear. Are you suggesting that we add a condition that parallel parking not be cut into the sidewalk area, but that it be basically up to kind of future endeavor for parking off the back of curb in the current street width?
I think their request to design alternate is fine in terms of requiring them to.
So no change.
Cut out, yeah.
Got it, okay.
Any other thoughts or motions?
I have some proposed language too for Bernard's condition that you mentioned a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if I captured exactly what you guys were looking for there. I can tell you what I have, or you can just tell me what you guys are looking for.
Go ahead, Catherine.
I think I heard two things. One was requiring vehicles to access from the west if they're reverse maneuvering into that move-in deck. And then I also heard having an employee present on site to provide, I think it's kind of hard, I defer to Kevin and staff, but I would think it's kind of hard to enforce the condition that vehicles have to enter from the west without somebody there or some other indication to let people know that that's how you have to reverse maneuver. So I didn't know if you wanted to put those two things together, requiring an on-site employee for reverse maneuvering moving vehicles and requiring that they access from the west.
I think that makes sense.
So here's what I have, which is all moving vehicles reverse maneuvering into the parking area located off West Lenore Street must access the parking area from the west. One on-site employee shall be present when moving vehicles are accessing the parking area located off of West Lenore Street to provide traffic control. That's similar to a condition you guys imposed on the St. Albans case.
Catherine, instead of where you had noted parking area, should we change that to be move-in area?
We should.
And were we putting a stipulation on the side of the vehicle as well? I mean, I know they called for it in their plan, but just to have, I guess, some verbiage to say that as well.
So I believe what the applicant said is that it will be designed to a height that accommodates up to 10-foot tall move-in box truck.
As long as, they reciprocate that to the tenants and such, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly request that they put in their move-in packets the size requirements of the vehicles and that an approach map for the arrival of move-in vehicles. I imagine they already do that, but we could make sure that it's something that happens.
I just have a quick question. Like, will we write these conditions, if the ownership of the project changes, do they continue or are they just applicable to this first round? And so I'm just thinking about long-term, effect of what we're all working hard on today.
So a special use permit runs with the land, so it doesn't matter who the subsequent property owner is. The condition will still be there unless it's been subsequently modified in some way.
Okay.
Well, Catherine, everything you've come up with so far sounds really great, and I appreciate you diligently assisting us. I would say generally I'm ready to move forward, unless we want to put something else in there about that informing the tenants.
I just added that if you want to. Again, you guys tell me what you want to add, keep or leave. But going off of what I just read to you about the reverse from the west and the one on-site employee, I just added at the end. The move-in parking area shall be designed to accommodate a vehicle no larger than a 10-foot tall move-in box truck. And I made all that one condition and said tenants shall be notified of the terms of this condition. So you guys tell me if you want both of those things in there or not. Or I guess it depends on however you make the motion, but.
I think that's Adam's motion.
So just so you're all clear, there's three conditions. So you have the material, the change in type or color for the 3 driveways, the portion of the sidewalk that abuts the 3 driveways. You have that so right now, I don't know if you finalize this, but we have that the move-in driveway off of West Lenore Street shall be no wider than what I have now is necessary to allow for sufficient vehicle movement into and out of the driveway and to comply with the UDO and Raleigh Street Design Manual. And I think there's some talk about if you want to say 24 feet, but then I didn't hear if that would be, don't want to box them in, so do something that's.
I think that's fine. I think that's fine. I think what Kevin's point was that he can, with what you just said, he can enforce it to 24 feet. And so I think that's great. So yeah, it's good.
Okay, you have that one, and then your last condition says the reverse maneuvering into the, not parking, the move-in area off of West Lenore must, so access the parking area from the west, one on-site employee present when move-in vehicles are accessing that area to provide traffic control. The move-in area shall be designed to accommodate a vehicle no larger than 10 feet, and tenants shall be notified of the terms of this condition. Those are the 3 that we've discussed.
Sounds good to me.
Well, if everybody's amenable, I'd make a motion to approve all of the design alternates with the 3 conditions as described by Catherine. Yep.
I second.
Second from Bernard. Any other questions, comments prior to vote? Okay, so be the best way. I guess I can go down the list. You would say yes or no. Go ahead and call your name. So Megan Beach.
Natalie is asking for us to repeat the conditions before we vote.
Okay.
I'm happy to read them all straight through again.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. The project will provide a change in material type or color for the portion of the sidewalk that abuts 1, the parking deck driveway located off of West Lenore Street, 2, the move-in driveway located off of West Lenore Street, 3, the parking deck driveway located off of West South Street. Second condition, the driveway width for the move-in driveway located off of West Lenore Street shall be no wider than necessary to allow for sufficient vehicle movement into and out of the driveway and to comply with the UDO and Raleigh Street Design Manual. 3, all move-in vehicles reverse maneuvering into the move-in area located off of West Lenore Street must access the parking area from the west. 1 on-site employee shall be present when move-in vehicles are accessing the move-in area to provide traffic control. The move-in area shall be designated to accommodate a vehicle, shall be designed to accommodate a vehicle no larger than 10 feet tall move-in box truck. Tenants shall be notified of the terms of this condition. And I don't know, just as a reminder, all of the applicants and their people are probably all on mute. So I don't know if you wanted to confer with them or not, but that's probably why they're messaging through this.
It sounds like Natalie wants to ask that we not restrict. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was allowed to say something. Yeah, I was just wondering, is it possible to not place the actual limitation on the size of the truck in the event we are able to accommodate a larger vehicle? We'd like to not be restricted from doing so, as long as we are still fitting within what is allowed on the turn radius and so forth. So just didn't want to unnecessarily restrict to a certain size vehicle this early in the process. Thank you.
I believe Worth, in his presentation,
Yeah, that was his size.
that was his request, that it was designed
Yeah.
for 10-foot maximum box truck.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Worth, if you unmute Worth.
Yeah, and that is the current plan and based on the current design. But again, like with kind of a lot of things we say, you know, it is so early in the process and it has to do with our ceiling height. So just wanted the flexibility if we are able to accommodate something bigger, but it is correct that at this time, that is the current plan.
So I guess then the question is, how do we restrict 18-wheelers from pulling up and hanging out in front of the project?
So the other question, so even like if you did, say for instance, if you did a full-size 24-foot or 26-foot box truck, is that truck going to be able to back completely into the building as well?
I'll defer to Ken Thompson on that question.
Okay.
Yeah, Ken, are you?
Yeah, currently, no, it could not. I don't see a significant design change that would allow us to get a box truck that big in there. I think what Natalie's trying to allude to is, you know, what if we can get a 12-foot tall truck as the design progresses. Versus, you know, so we could probably still limit it to, you know, exclude large box trucks and tractor trailers.
Yeah.
And, you know, vehicles are changing too, so somebody might use a new van that Dodge has or somebody has, and it might be able to be a little taller because it has a lower wheelbase, right? So,
Would the commission be amenable to say limited to a moving truck that would not stick out past the face of the right-of-way, property right-of-way? So it wouldn't be covering up the sidewalk, and it could still be outside of the building footprint by a little bit.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, 'cause it's not really about the height, it's about the length, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about the truck turn template that they're showing for me, which is, you know, doesn't really relate to the height, but it kind of does.
I mean, to me, a condition where that truck would not stick out past the property right away. Or the property line.
Okay, so how about changing that portion of the condition that currently talks about the 10 feet to the move-in areas shall be used only by vehicles which can be located within the move-in area without extending beyond the property line?
That sounds good to me.
Think the property line, or you think the face of the building?
I mean, the sidewalk, you know, back a curb to face of the building is pretty wide. Seems like it's probably 20-some feet. So even
You
if
don't
it's
have it
out to the property line and that sidewalk is, looks like the sidewalk is still 16 feet to pass by it. I mean, I would think that would be okay.
Yeah, you don't want it to protrude far enough out where you got pedestrians walking out in the street.
Yeah. So that would still give them 16 feet to walk past it.
Okay.
Are there any objections to that from the applicant? Sorry, Corey.
Adam's made a motion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Adam's made a motion. Can ask. He can pull that motion. He can amend the motion, or he can keep the motion as is. This is our discussion.
Certainly, if I don't know how that works exactly, but we can keep the motion if Catherine feels like what she said can be amended to adjust, or I can withdraw that motion and we can say the same thing again, basically.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think you can say that, I don't think there's been a second yet to your motion that I heard. So I think you can just.
Bernard
seconded.
Well, you guys can just let that one, if you want to amend it, or I guess offer a second motion or substitute motion. I guess the question is, does everybody want to agree to change the condition to just say what you just talked about instead of the 10 feet to have the move-in area extend beyond the property line? If there's it doesn't really matter to me either way. You just want to kind of offer a substitute motion, and that was the one that can be voted on with that amendment. That's fine.
Catherine, can you read what that subsequent language would be to replace the 10-foot?
Yeah, I can read the whole third condition again, if that would be helpful. Okay. All move-in vehicles reverse maneuvering into the move-in area located off of West Lenore Street must access the move-in area from the west. One on-site employee shall be present when move-in vehicles are accessing the move-in area to provide traffic control. The move-in areas shall be used only by vehicles which can be located within the move-in area without extending beyond the property line. Tenants shall be notified of the terms of this condition.
Adam, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, if everyone's good with that, I think that's fine. I think it gets across the intent, while allowing the flexibility that I think the client is looking for.
Bernard, you seconded it. How do you feel about that?
With that as well.
That's a first and a second.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Do we want to ask, just verify with Victoria or Worth, if we want to just open it up really quick, just to make sure that language is fine with them?
Yes, sir. I believe that language. Sorry, go ahead, Victoria.
Yes, I was just going to say this to Victoria, and that language is good with us.
Thank you. So we have a motion. We have a second. Any other comment with the motion? Being none, I will go ahead and read regular members off for voting. Yay or nay? Megan Beach. Yes. Martha Early.
Yes.
Will Gaskins.
Yes.
Patrice Gilmore.
Yes.
Chris Roberts.
Yes.
Marcus Tuttle.
Yes.
Catherine Hogan.
Yes.
Adam Walters.
Yes.
And so that is, and I yes, so that is unanimous. So that passes.
That's me.
Bernard, you're an alternate member.
Oh, okay.
What do you think? Well, being an alternate member, I guess
Oh,
he
that's
could
cool.
not second, could he?
I think it's fine. You had a unanimous vote and everybody seemed to be in agreement. I think
I
it's
was going
okay.
to say I'll be glad to be the second. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Okay, so that being said, thank you all for that. That hearing.
Thank
number
you.
two. That, thank you. So let's roll right into hearing number 3. It is DA 0021-2021. This is 2723 Clark Avenue, Holy Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church. And I will turn it over to Carter for the overview.
Thank you. I'll read the request and then bring out the presentation. The applicant is requesting a 155-foot design alternate to EDO section 8.3.5.c.3, which requires driveways accessing up to an 80-foot wide street right-of-way be spaced at least 200 feet apart, center line to center line, in order to construct a driveway 45 feet apart from center line to center line from a driveway located on the adjacent parcel to the south. That is in order to expand an existing church facility on a 2.13 acre site, zone R6, located at 2723 Clark Avenue and 120, 122, and 128 Brooks Avenue. Okay. Site, as I mentioned before, location, zone R6. I'm happy to answer any questions. I believe Kevin Kidd is still here. He can answer questions on the transportation side.
Thank you, Carter. Kevin, do you have anything else to add at this point?
No, other than I do have familiarity with this case and I'm available for any questions that arise.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions for staff at this time? All right, being none, the applicant will now present evidence and legal arguments in support of the request. Reminder to the applicant, any evidence and arguments must focus on the applicable standards. And Laura, the attorney, I'd like to proceed with your presentation. And I'm happy to swear any witnesses that you have before they testify.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Evan Lorman, attorney here in Raleigh. I represent Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. We have 3 witnesses that will be presenting on our behalf today. Graham Smith, who's the project designer with Site Collaborative, is going to handle the bulk of the presentation. We have 2 other individuals as well. If it makes sense to go ahead and swear them in right now, that's fine with us.
Let's go ahead and do that. Graham Smith, you go ahead and state your name and.
Yep, Graham Smith, landscape architect, Site Collaborative, 821 Wake Forest Road here in Raleigh.
Graham, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And I believe Eric Harden.
Good.
Eric
Harden. Eric Harden, Holy Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church Council President, 10124 Darling Street, Raleigh, North Carolina, 27613.
Eric, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I believe Tika Hicks, right?
Yes, hi, this is Tika Hicks, Holy Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church, member for the project, and 117 West Park Drive.
Tika, could you speak up just a little bit? I could not hear that in there, the address.
Sorry about that. Is this better?
That is great.
Okay, thanks. Tika Hicks, Holy Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church, committee member for the project. And my address is 117 West Park Drive, Raleigh, 27605.
Thank you, Tika. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you'll provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. All right, Evan, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you if you'd like to.
I'm sure. So to start off, Graham has a presentation that's been submitted, and I'd like to ask that that be entered into the record. And then I'll turn it over to him to introduce the project and why it complies with the design alternate standards laid out in the UDO.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, everybody. And so we have gone through several rounds with the SPR process. Somewhat got in right before we would be a tier 1 essentially, but we're in the SPR process. Next slide, Carter, if you don't mind. Project location is here, very close to Hillsborough Street, but in the western part of west of downtown, but inside the Beltline as well. It's a church that's been around for a long time, serving both the neighborhood as well as NC State students. There's an on-campus, the Lutheran campus ministry meets at this building. Next slide. The 4 parcels is part of the SPR. The church does own 6 parcels, but the 4 parcels that are part of the SPR are the parcels noted here. The main parcel is kind of the L-shaped out on the corner there, and it has the distinctive architectural buildings on it that you'll see pictures of. And then the 3 residential projects, the 3 residential houses along Brooks Avenue, 120, 122, and 128 Brooks Avenue. And those houses have been owned by the church for 30 to 40 years in hopes that someday, and they've been using them as rentals for serving various members of the community, but they are going to look to what the launch of this project is opening new doors, and they wanted to kind of create a new landing spot for their church and serve their members more appropriately. And so they would like to build some outdoor amenity space, and that leads to the design that you'll see forthcoming. Next slide. The current conditions on this site, these are all the existing driveways in orange and purple. The purple actually are the ones that affect this site. And so what we have are 5 along this site. 1 is paved, and they're all curb cuts. They're all legal curb cuts, but the 4 on the residential properties are gravel, but they have been, there's some single family and duplex units that they have been renting here. And like I say, they've owned for 40 plus years. So next slide. And we're just going to walk from north to south and then kind of go, we're going to see driveways on the left-hand side as we do this. So we're walking back towards NC State campus in the next few slides. So this is the kind of the iconic view of the church at the corner of Brooks and Clark as we go. And next slide. This is where we get to the church's current driveway. And so this starts to become the real problem. Number 1 there has a pretty severe slope. It doesn't allow for ADA access. There are ADA spaces that are up close to the building in this little nook up in where the paved drive ends, but they're not compliant ADA spaces. They're old hangovers from kind of the old code. And then we start to see some of the challenges just with access and the doors. You'll see it as we slide forward. But 2 and 3 are the initial residential driveways. Once again, we have 5 driveways on this facade that we're looking to take care of and limit down to 1. So keep going. You start to see driveway 1 and how limiting it is, and how it starts to see, you see there's a wall. It's hard to see, but if you did get on Google Street View, you would see that basically the church does not land on Brooks Avenue. It has no entrance to Brooks Avenue in a way that's comforting or welcoming, and that's their main access point. They have 4 doors that are not ADA accessible. They have a group of people that are, that churches do age a little bit, the congregation ages a little bit, so they want to ensure that they're meeting the needs of their congregation moving forward. And so the opening new doors was not only landing a little better in the community and creating some outdoor amenity space, but it was creating accessible routes to all of their doors as well. So these are the three of the 5 driveways. Next slide. You get to see, there's the view back into the kind of the cubby hole back in there in the nook of the building. So there's driveway 2 and 3, and we'll get moving here to 4 and 5 here. Next slide. You start to see 4 and 5 there as we get a little closer to Vanderbilt on the end here, the southern end. And then you will see at the next slide, next slide, if you don't mind, Carter. You start to see right past number 5 is where our driveway is proposed. And kind of right past where that sign is, and there's the crepe myrtle there. And that's where the current driveway is there. And essentially that is on grade, on level with two of the 4 doors we need to be accessible with. So it starts to create this idea that we're coming in on grade and we're kind of turning left into the site, and we create instead of a straight shot up at 7% up that current driveway, we're going on a level grade and kind of creating a nice, more accessible route into the site. And then the challenge, though, of course, is we're too close to the residential driveway to the south. That driveway is a rental property, it appears. It has expanded its gravel in the last few years, while it is a residential property. And then we're have some proximity to Vanderbilt. The good thing with this, and we'll start to talk about it, is that car that's parked there would not be space for, there's possibly a space for 1 car that's parked there, but oftentimes in these photos, there's some NC State students parked there. So the left-hand visual will actually be better because of the way our driveway will be placed. So next slide, if you don't mind. There you go. You start to see it a little closer. So there's Vanderbilt and a neighbor. So, all right, next slide. This is a plan view of proposed. So previously, if you saw all those arrows and where we were, now we have only 1 purple, arrow on our side. And so we've started to really change the character of the church as it fronts Brooks Avenue. You see how it fronts Clark Avenue, and it has a nice presence there and some wooded lawns and stuff like that. What they wanted to do was create a landing on Brooks as well, have some prominence there where they could have some community events and things like that. We also then had to create, a stormwater device because we're adding some impervious. So we needed to create some type of an integrated stormwater device. And so sliding this driveway started to become a problem because it starts to slice up how we would collect our stormwater and add additional challenges there. It also would slice up, which the problem is now, currently you have to cross this non-ADA route, but this driveway to kind of get into the building. It becomes a real challenge. The front doors aren't noticed. You don't know where to go. It's not an intuitive site. So we've tried to really clear all that up. We've provided 40 parking spaces, but ADA access to these 4 doors that matter. We've created outdoor play space, outdoor plaza space, and just integrated stormwater throughout the entire setup. It also creates opportunity for 5 more parking spaces on street, because currently the street is so divided up with driveways, you don't get a lot of parking on that street. And there is a conflict of, NC State students love to park on the street. But it also then takes any church parking, or 40 of the church parking spaces, and puts them into the site. So it does change the dynamic of parking. We think it improves it quite a bit in the area. Next slide. Here's a site plan, a little bit of a blow up. You can just start to see the purple arrows that start to show where, ADA accessibility is moving through and across the site, and how that accessibility is improved. There's kind of a grand promenade step that does come out of the narthex door. But so that's not defined as an ADA route, but it is a kind of a communal space that people could gather on. And we have the ADA spaces noted. We have the visitor parking spaces noted. All these things that are on the street during church service, and now they're going to be moved into the site. So next slide. Sorry for the overlay here. This is it didn't come through when I had them laid on top of each other. It's a little sloppy, but just showing some of the distances that we have, and Carter noted that the 155 feet request from the 200-foot mark. So we show 45 feet here. So next slide. Meeting the intent, we wanted to prove that we met the intent. We're safe, efficient, convenient, direct, convenient, and egress. So removing 5 driveways from a safe standpoint, removing 5 driveways, installing 1, allowing for pedestrians to move safely from Brooks Avenue via ADA compliant pedestrian route that doesn't exist today, and not crossing vehicular traffic. So that ADA route doesn't cause conflicts at all. They're coming from Brooks and going straight able to go into the building. It is efficient because we're removing 5 existing driveways, installing only 1. We're also, adding 5 more parking spaces on the site, on the street, that aren't there today. It's convenient because it does allow visitor parking now to be on the site for the church. It allows for ADA spaces to be on the site for the church and the staff. It allows for more on-street parking for those who possibly need it at all times, NC State students in particular. It does create an ADA pedestrian route that doesn't exist today between Brooks Avenue and anything on that site. There is no ADA route currently. It is direct. Because the current direct route is dangerous and it conflicts pedestrians and vehicular traffic, it is not ADA compliant. So we felt that this was the most direct and cohesive approach. To and from a street, it does provide a clear connection to Brooks, and it also opens up kind of the visibility to and from Brooks, and the idea that you have clear sight lines and you kind of have some intuitive wayfinding built into the overall site design, and you know where you're going, given the intent of the way the parking lot's designed. Next slide. General access requirements still part of the intent, meeting the intents. Do all existing proposed development and proposed developments, they must provide vehicular, pedestrian, bicycle ingress and egress to and from a street and or abutting the site. This proposed solution does provide this. Another requirement is does all on-site parking areas must have vehicular access from a street, an alley or drive aisle or a cross-access easement. The proposed solution does provide this. Another part of the intent requirements, all on-site parking areas must be designed to allow vehicles to enter and exit in a forward motion unless otherwise approved by the director. An improved alley that's not applicable, but the proposed solution does allow for this and does provide this. Next slide. Continuing to finding number 1, 3.5B, pedestrian access requirements. We do propose the proposed solution provides an ADA compliant pedestrian access connecting the main entrances of the building, establishments or uses on the site, all the public access, public entry points, sidewalks. It does provide this solution and actually enhances it. It currently does not exist. Pedestrian access shall consist of an accessible, easily discernible, and ADA compliant walkway. It does do this and provides it. It's currently non-existent. Pedestrian access surface located on private property shall be constructed of concrete. We do provide that. It's currently non-existent. The pedestrian access routes between the buildings and public rights-of-way shall be physically separated from vehicular surface areas. And so we do that only at the street you would cross where Brooks is, and it'd be a drive aisle, crosswalk right there. But currently it is non-existent, and we have greatly improved this. The site plans containing that last item 5 is not applicable. So findings 2 and 3, I think, are on the next slide. It does not increase congestion or compromise safety. We believe the church is not physically expanding the service. They're not physically expanding their buildings, but the services have the same amount of visitors, and the services have the same amount of visitors as before. But with this change, we're moving more parking onto the site and less onto the street. More parking is provided on the street as well as in the scenario, and the driveways have actually been removed. So congestion starts to be cleaned up, and we think we're improving safety. The proposed solution simplifies movement into and out of the church with an ADA accessible pedestrian route that doesn't conflict with vehicular movements. So once again, improving safety and decreasing congestion. And then the last item, finding 3, does not conflict with an approved or built roadway project. None have been identified by city staff at this time. There should be another slide or 2. Finding 4, yes, we wanted to work through this. We believe that given the physical environment, compliance is not physically, so one of these, the way you guys write it is a design adjustment is deemed reasonable due to one or more of the following. So we note that 2 of them, if not more, are, reliable or relatable to this project. If the project were forced to comply by placing the driveway in the center of the frontage, it would not allow for the following due to physical feasibility. The ADA pedestrian access would conflict with vehicular access route. The integrated stormwater approach and a singular stormwater, kind of simplifying everything there, and a green stormwater. We're doing LID, so we're not doing any pipe system. We're doing only surface drainage. that would be challenged as well. A consistent open and visual edge for the church to open their doors, which is the original driving initiative of the project, would not happen if this, this language is a little weird, but the way it's set up would not be allowed to happen if due to physical feasibility. And then item B, compliance would not meaningfully improve connectivity. We believe that it would improve connectivity internally within the site. However, if it were forced to comply, connectivity to the external parcels would not meaningfully improve, as is not applicable. So you asked us to select one of it deemed to be reasonable, one or more of the following. I think we've proven that we're one or more of the following. So maybe another slide. I don't know. There's 24. So there you go. That's it. Sorry, I stumbled on some words, folks. It's been late. So Atika and Eric, if you as representatives of the church would like to add anything as well, feel free. I'm sorry I missed something if I did.
This is Tika. I think you covered it well. I just wanted to reiterate or support, excuse me, section 8.3.1 and 10. Just want to highlight that the direct route is currently dangerous and that the proposed project improves upon that. And then also to and from street, that it provides a clear connection to Brooks Avenue, which currently does not exist. And then in sections 8.3.5.a, general access requirements, that the proposed development will provide ingress and egress to the street in a way that's lacking currently. And I could go on, but I won't. Just generally want to say that I'm here to support the project. Thank you.
I believe there are no additional participants in support signed up. Their opponents signed up as well. So I will go ahead and turn it back to you, Evan or Graham, if you have any closing statements, if you need.
I think Graham summed it up very, very well in his presentation, that we meet the standards that are laid out in the UDO. These 4 standards that if you satisfy them, then you qualify for the design alternate. So I don't really have much more to say in addition to that, or anything to say in addition to that.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we have any questions from the commission or the applicant at this time, or for staff?
I got one. Can't quite tell from the plans what's kind of proposed there on the edge of the property line between that last house before Vanderbilt.
That's a type A buffer. So it's a 10-foot, has a fence and landscape there. So it's a 10-foot setback. The parking lot is 10 feet. Sorry, the graphics are a little out of whack here, but it is a type A landscape buffer with a fence.
Got it. And the fence runs virtually all the way to the sidewalk?
Yes, it does. Kind of the LOD line. And then as it turns to the north, there's a retaining wall back there, but the fence would be placed there as well. That's a current retaining wall, but yeah, there'll be a fence on that south side. So
thanks.
Yeah.
I just had a question as well.
Sorry, go ahead, Bernard.
So when you're coming down Brooks, like I was looking at Google Maps, there are 2 buildings, I guess, after the church. Are those owned by the church as well? Is that where the driveway's coming through?
There are 4 buildings from Vanderbilt. So there's a little small block between Hillsborough and Vanderbilt. And then there are 4 buildings before you get to the church, 4 residential buildings.
Okay.
The first one on the corner of Vanderbilt and Yeah, there you go. The one with the orange arrow to it, on the corner of Vanderbilt and Brooks is Stain. The church does not own that.
Okay.
And then the other 3 residential buildings are the buildings they've owned and they're tearing down.
Okay. That was my question because I was looking at it and I was just wondering, are they going to run right through these people's driveways? So the church owns those. Gotcha.
Yeah, they do. Yep. They've owned them for many, many years with the thought that they may expand the building or something else, but they've decided to create more outdoor amenity space, and possibly enhance some of their opportunities for ADA accessibility as well.
Okay. So with that being said, also, like you see how you have the parking lot that comes off of Clark? Like,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Was there a way to connect that as well to come around?
No, because there's only about 23 feet between the building right there. So we're doing a pedestrian improvement there.
Okay.
And we have about 6 feet of grade differential there.
Okay.
So we're creating a new sidewalk in that section. And maybe a little bit of teen hangout, youth group hangout back there, but there's not enough room for a driveway.
Okay.
So
yeah, because on Google it just shows like it's trees. So, but okay,
yes.
That's cool.
Yep.
Any other questions for the commission or for staff? For staff or for the applicant? All right, being none, I'll close the evidentiary hearing and open it for board deliberations. Any thoughts, comments?
The reason I was asking that question, my only thought would be to, is there value in peeling that fence back a little bit just to give more sight lines coming out of that parking lot, both for the driveway and for people exiting.
Yeah, I bet it's required as a part of a type A buffer. I wonder if the Graham probably has a sight triangle on the driveway and would know if it's in the sight triangle or not, or if it would have to back out of it.
If I can talk, I will, but I don't know if I can.
Go ahead, Graham. We're formally informal.
I tended to notice that earlier. It does meet the sight distance triangle, so it does comply currently. It works out. I hear what you're saying, Will. And it is a required fence too, for that buffer line. So
right. No, I'm mainly just thinking about that house that will remain in their driveway, in terms of their ability to
I get you.
Driveway or whatever and be able to see who's coming out of the parking lot.
We might be able to look into that. I don't know that I can solve that tonight, but as the landscape buffer gets wider there, because of that tree island close to the driveway, maybe we could look at taking the fence down for the last 30 feet or so.
I would hope that, it's built into the code to help the adjacent neighbor, and if it was something the neighbor didn't want, there would be some agreement between that city that pulled back a little bit, or if we could look at maybe a little bit wider buffer to reduce some of that fence, I think that'd be helpful as well.
It's a well-trafficked area from a pedestrian traffic perspective too. There's just a lot of active conflict there when school's in session.
Yeah, which is why this is actually really great, getting rid of so many driveways and having ADA accessibility. I think there's parallel parking there now right up to that, the driveway that gravel driveway that's going to stay. So I think the parallel parking is probably going to do more visual blocking than the fence behind the sidewalk, but probably all of it could, we want it to be as open as possible.
So we could move on if I'm the only one who, but is the reverse true? Is by putting the fence there for the existing driveway that's remaining on the other property, does how does that affect their sightlines?
Well, are you asking how does the fence affect the sightlines of the gravel driveway to the south? Yeah, I think they're going to be pulling out. They're going to the fence is going to be way behind them when they're trying to look out on the road because they have to pull across the sidewalk, then across the street yard, then they have to get out past the parallel parked car. So the sidewalks, the fence is probably going to be 12 feet behind their eyes at that point.
If they're backing out of the driveway, because it looks like it's actually not a gravel driveway. I don't think it's actually a paved driveway.
It's an expanded gravel driveway that they have expanded significantly, and it's currently there's an evergreen hedge and a large tree right on that property line. So
yeah,
street view. So they're currently restricted views in the current. Our images don't go far enough up. Sorry, Carter, but I just pulled it back up on Google Street View and look at the
I'm
other.
going to change their current condition.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm good. I think we've poked this enough.
I'll just say that I think, as Graham so eloquently went through the alternates to discuss, the safety, the better on-street parking, the safer for pedestrians, sidewalk, less curb cuts, safer for bicyclists, safer for ingress and egress, for cars traveling down the road. I mean, and then just going through the findings. I think you did a real good job with that. I tend to just approve as.
I certainly think it seems like a win for that streetscape and for safety and added parking and ADA accessibility. I think it's kind of a.
So I move to approve DA 0021-2020 as presented.
I'll second it.
I'll second it, I think.
Yeah, we need a second from a regular. Okay, so we got.
Oops, sorry.
Motion and a second from Will, and I will go ahead and any other discussion? So I will go ahead and call our regular members. Candace,
I'm supposed to vote on this one? Or is Catherine?
well, we had her for the first one.
Okay, all right. No, I'm a yes.
Megan Beach,
Yes.
Martha Eberly,
Yes.
Will Gaskins,
Yes.
Reese Gilmore,
Yes.
Chris Roberts,
Yes.
Marcus Tuttle,
Yes.
and Walters.
Yes.
A yes, so that is a unanimous approval. Thank you guys for bringing that before us today. I think it's gonna be a great project. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, that's gonna close our business portion.
Everybody, I might suggest you go on to the minutes if you want to do that now.
You try to find them. I have them here somewhere. We do that in just 1 second. Do you want to go ahead and report on Sir Walter or anything right now? Back to the minutes in just a second.
Well, I'm happy to give a update. I think we want to talk about the design certificate design. So just to kind of an update, we've narrowed down the date to December 14th That's a date that the mayor is available. And we also have availability at the Union Station. We're currently looking at some options, even including using the plaza space out front to do an outdoor event. But I think the consensus that we had in discussion with the last meeting we had was to pursue an in-person event, also with the ability for people that aren't in person to, kind of participate or be engaged. So we have our our communications folks with the department working on caterers, music. We've got AV lined up. Like I said, we have location. So we're moving in that direction. I think the next step will be to find out from y'all who wants to participate in terms of giving out the awards or actually making presentations. So I'm happy to follow up with folks, take volunteers for that. We typically have members present, say, 2 awards. And just to let you know, the city council affirmed the jury's recommendations. So there are 10 award winners. Anybody on the commission wants to know who they are beforehand, I'm happy to share that, offline. But I think it was some very good selections and tended to be on the landscape spectrum this year. So I think that is something a change that we've had from previous years where we didn't have many landscape projects. So that's definitely a positive. But we can talk more about the certificate design. We did also talk about doing sponsorships and whether those are money or gifts in kind. So I'll also be reaching out to our folks, probably just tomorrow when I have a little more time, put out to you all and some other folks who expressed interest if you want to do some sponsorship for that. So basically at the same levels we've done in the past, I think 2019, so that could help defray some costs. And one thing that we will need to do, and as an in-kind, would be beer or wine. So if you want to, your firm wants to sponsor that specifically, we'd be happy to take that because we cannot purchase that with city funds. But our caterer, we'd be looking for someone who would actually serve that and hold that license. I'm happy to take any questions about the event. So lay it on me.
Carter, I'd be happy to purchase beer and wine.
Down for that. And we can talk a little bit more once we get an idea of costs for that. Because we have some wine left over from 2019, so I'm not sure if that'll really kept well. So,
Marcus, you want to come over for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we'll start early. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that report. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be nice to have an event, see everybody in person again. So that'll be great. Looking forward to it. All right. I've had a chance to pull up my meeting minutes. We have a motion to approve.
Corey, I'll move to approve as written.
And I will second. Any opposed? If you're opposed, go ahead and speak now. If not, consider them approved. All right, they're approved. I do not have any further list of. Do we have anything further on your end, Carter, that we need to discuss this evening?
Sure. One thing that we were trying to do was to finalize the designer for the certificate. We had put out a call for designers a while back, asked for folks to submit samples of their work and a resume. We ended up getting 3 responses. And honestly, only one person who responded actually followed the directions and gave us a resume and work samples. The 2 others submitted samples. I think it was a great variety with the 3 submissions. we had a small jury look at them. Hopefully we were going to look at a lot of submissions and narrow them down to 3, but everyone was in agreement we should bring all 3 designers forward with some sketches. I reached out to all 3. 2 had responded enthusiastically. 1 did not respond at all, and after several attempts to contact him, that was Glenn Snell. I did not receive anything from him. The other 2, I received some questions, which I shared those questions and answers on the thing with all 3 designers. But in response, we received 1 sketch from the designer, Meg Finn. You could submit up to 3. The last one, Riley Turner, as we got closer to the deadline, which was this Tuesday, she informed me she had a death in the family and was not able to submit designs in that time. And I had asked her, well, if you need a couple more days, she wanted about a couple more days. And I said, yeah, get them to me Thursday morning. I'll get them out to everybody. I've not gotten back to her. I don't feel like bugging her with that issue. So I can bring up what we've had, but I think the issue would be that we only received 1 actual sketch from a designer in this second round. So I guess your options would be to look at that, go back and look at the interested designers in their portfolio work, combination of the 2, or I'm happy to take suggestions. So if you want, I could pull up information, or if you'd like to discuss before I do that.
I like the direction of the 1 sketch that's been submitted.
Yeah, Carter, can you pull that up?
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can here. Okay, can you all see?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. This is Meg Finn. She does her specialty is kind of collages. So this is what she had submitted as her submission, her sketch.
And if you look at her portfolio, she does similar type stuff like this, where it's like prints that are, yeah, there you go.
Carter, did she provide any thought behind the Sir Walter Raleigh one?
In terms of thought, I mean, like a statement or anything?
Yeah, or like, just the reason she chose these colors or anything like that.
No, I think really the only comment she had was, she would put in those spots for like the mayor signing and the chair and kind of the name in this blank space. She didn't really get into much more detail about the statement. She didn't provide a statement either when she did the response to the call. And nobody did. I think one concern might be translating this into a graphic design, an actual print format. I mean, I don't think it's impossible, but we'll definitely probably need to work some, get our city graphic designer squad involved.
And we can provide her with comments back, correct?
Yes, the idea would be that, you'd be able to look at up to say 9, concepts. And if you like one concept from a designer to, kind of go in that direction, and then we, basically hire that designer and then we'd work with that person to kind of do the final, hopefully with one of the concepts that was submitted.
So are we kind of, I don't want to dig into what we're looking at here if we're if she's going to provide other stuff. Is that what you're saying?
She had submitted this, and I asked her if she wanted to provide additional, and she declined. She said she just wanted to go with this one. And I also verified to make sure I didn't miss anything from her, and she said no. She had just gone with one.
So is this kind of like this is what we've got, and if we want to take it, we can. If we don't, we got nothing else.
I mean, it's up to you. That's why I had provided, and I apologize for sending out so close to the meeting, the portfolios of the two interested designers. This is the work of the Raleigh Turner. It was a resume, and she had submitted some samples. And I think you could tell she's a professional graphic designer, and some of the things she's done. She provided some, I guess, some freehand work. We did give them a fairly narrow window for providing these concepts sketches of basically about a week. So we knew they would come in rough, but.
So do we need to extend that for till the next?
Preferably not, but I want to find out, if you want to do another week and try to see if we can get something from Riley, we could probably do that. I wouldn't want to push it to the next meeting because we're really backing up into, actually working on this and getting printing done. So I did reach out to Riley Turner, and she'd asked if she has some more time, and I gave her till today and not seen anything, but then again, I didn't want to bug her with a family, not the family.
Carter, what's your recommendation that we do?
Well, I would say, if you want to choose between these two, maybe base it on, what their portfolios are, timing wise, we'd like to give ourselves about a month from when we have someone and be able to work with them. And in the past, we typically see if there's any commission members that want to kind of quarterback that, being kind of like the liaison with this designer. I think last year we ended up with one submission as an artist, and I think they gave us three, or he gave us three concepts, and you chose from that. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. I think, like I said, this might, I think it's very interesting. You might need some work in terms of getting that into a printable form, and then some, some hand holding and some and work actually getting into a digital format. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but that's something we might need a little more work on.
I'll just say my thought is, this person kind of went by the rules and did what was asked, and for the most part, no more, but did what was asked. And I hate to, move in another direction, and if this is the one person that kind of came through and did what we asked them to do, fit within the timeline that we asked. I mean, if we wanted to give more time, we probably should have done that beforehand. I think everybody knew what the rules were, and this person came through, so I feel like this is kind of where we're heading. I think if this person is willing to work with the city's graphic artist and maybe some people from our commission to come up with something that's workable in print format, I think my recommendation is just kind of move forward.
Carter, how does this work with the what was it, $100 stipend for the three finalists? And is that not conditional on providing three options?
Yes, we said it would be, basically a reimbursement or stipend, with it going through the city process, we have to set them up as vendors. So it's not something that we paid for them in advance. But I think I reached out to the second person, and I gave her a little more time I didn't get a response from that. You know, but if we didn't get 3 in there, I don't think we should probably provide them stipend. It's $150.
Carter, so I do feel, I mean, I agree with Corey. However, I do feel like in the past, we have had some sort of description or meaning behind the certificate, and that was shared, you know, publicly at the event as to why we chose this design. So I do feel pretty strongly that we should ask her for something like that. And then I guess my question for you is, in the past, how do you feel about, like, when are we overstepping our bounds and working with the artists? I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, certainly, but I do have a couple things that I would recommend or change about what was just shown. So in the past, have we changed some stuff pretty substantially?
I'm not sure about substantially. I think we've kind of gone with the concept, and you know, we've worked. We've asked them to say, hey, well, can you try maybe these 3 color combinations, or have you thought about increasing the size of Sir Walter, or maybe shrinking or moving them over to the other side? So, you know, I think we as a client have a lot of leeway to ask for that. You know, the idea would be that we'd have someone we can work with, and you know, they basically be the, you know, our vendor, and we're the client. So, you know, I don't remember. I don't think we tweaked much last year, but in the past we've moved things around and changed with font sizes and stuff. So I think we do have that leeway.
Last year we asked the artist to move around some like flowers and stuff like that were positioned weirdly with the fence.
And there's some additional text that would need to go on what we just saw and places for signature. And I think if we helped them out and gave them all that information that needed to be on there, as well as some help with digital layouts, I think we could get to a really nice design. I really love the idea of the collage. So I'm all for that. I think the portfolio of Riley was also really nice. I really love the hand sketches that were in there. But seeing the concept from the one that you just had up on the screen, and the effort to go forth, that they put forth to give us something to actually look at and comment on, I feel like we should move forward with them.
Yeah, I agree. I think the collage is cool, and it fits an award like the one we're giving. But I certainly would want who is it, Mary Elizabeth, then to be game for spending some time adjusting this, because I don't think it works as it is. I'm same with Candace. Some questions about it that I'd love for her to like talk about why his face is French lettering and what that French lettering is about, and some of the details, why the font choice and all that. But I think we can move forward. If she's game with us being involved, it'd be great to just move forward.
Yeah, and I think in the past we have changed, you know, font and color, font, and like, I think one of my biggest, and this is why I was asking how far is too far, but to me, Sir Walter looks a little more jolly than he should look, like a little puffier than he should look. I feel like we may get some comments back on that. But I don't know if it's the style of the collage, you know, if it's hard to do that in this style So those would be some of the questions that I would be curious if you think we're asking too much. Or if other people don't have that feedback, then I'm totally fine with not asking it.
I don't have a strong. Sorry, Carter. I was going to say I don't have a strong feeling. Like the fact that the style of it makes him appear maybe a little puffier than he should. I mean, that's artistic interpretation, I think.
Right.
Some artistic license, and I'm okay with that. I do think the point about the French words and things like that is a good comment, and I don't speak French, and I would want to make sure that nothing is offensive or or anything like that with what goes on his face. So yeah, I do think as long as she's willing to work with us, and I also think Candace's point about providing a statement of, what is the concept behind this design, so we can talk about that at the awards is important. I mean, now that you mentioned it, Adam, like I am curious, why is it French wording on his face?
Yeah, yeah. Carter, did you get the feeling that she's not just like dropping this as like this is it, or what was your vibe on that?
I don't know. We did only give them a week, so I think in the past we've given a little more time than that, and they've been a little more fleshed out. I will say that this is probably the least literal interpretation of Sir Walter we've had, because they've generally taken the vector graphic that we've had as an example and used that. And her first question is, "Do I have to use that graphic?" And I basically said, "No, you don't. We've talked in the past. Can we have a Picasso version of Sir Walter?" "Yeah, sure, why not?" So she's probably venturing more than we've seen in the past. If you want to do that, it'd be different, definitely. Mm-hmm. But we can talk about kind of what fills that space. Why is it French? And I'm happy to reach out to her and say that's not necessarily a negative, but they want to know why. Maybe provide a little more information, and I would suggest maybe 2 or 3 of you who want to kind of help me shepherd this and provide that feedback. I'm happy to do that.
It's awesome that you didn't use the vector. That's a good thing. Just to the whole digitization of it thing. Are her other concepts in her portfolio? Are they not? Is this not just like a concept where she's laid the elements out and then it would be digitized for final production like the other stuff? Or do you feel like that's? Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, I don't think that should not be a problem to just do it and then scan it, right?
Right. This feels to me just like it was this is our working draft, so I can move stuff around and be able to play with it type of thing. Mm-hmm. But I mean, yes, there are missing pieces at play here.
I will say in the past that when we've selected someone, we've said, hey, we love this, we like this, we don't like this. Can you maybe provide 3 versions of this, from now, and then kind of work that way. I'm happy to reach out to her tomorrow, very soon, to talk about this and some of the logistical issues and scan that sort of thing, and just get a little feedback and ask her to provide a little more information. Like I said, it's not insurmountable. It's not as plain as a graphic designer just doing it on the computer, but it makes it more interesting. So if you'd like to move forward with that, we can make that happen. And if there's some folks that want to volunteer to kind of help me and be the design sounding board, I'm happy to take those volunteers.
I'm happy to do that, Carter.
Good, moving
Sorry,
forward.
Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, Adam, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, Carter, why don't you reach out to her and in our next meeting we can see what she says and make a move from there based on what she says. I don't know what folks think about that.
Carter, wasn't your desire there to move a little faster than next meeting?
That would definitely be preferable. You know, I'm happy to get back to you all via email with the responses. If you want, like I said, if you this is the direction you want to go and you're comfortable going that way and she's flexible, you know, we can do it that way.
I suggest that, like I did before, that, yeah, we move forward with her and let you discuss with her flexibility. If we hear that maybe there's not any flexibility in that, I would hope that maybe you could come back to us and we can kind of discuss next steps. But I would move forward to let you kind of engage her, assuming that she is flexible and will work with the city's graphic and some of the commission's comments.
I agree with that.
Anybody opposed to that? Okay. So I'm assuming that's giving you the go-ahead for that, Carter.
Is there anybody that feels especially strong about wanting to kind of help this move along? I'm happy to take the help.
Carter, I wish I could, but with the time frame that you're trying to turn all this around in, I am loaded up for the next couple of weeks, so I'm going to have to pass.
Carter, if you can't find anybody else, I'll help. But I am no graphic artist, so you may want to find somebody else.
Before I throw myself on the altar, how do you want me to help? Exactly.
Well, I think it would be, you know, if we've got some, as we're refining it, looking at them and kind of giving comments, and just kind of, like I said, being a sounding board, if just kind of helping finalize that design.
Okay, well, I have opinions. I can use this.
I'll help too, Carter. This is Patrice.
Okay, I mean, I'll be doing the legwork. I'm just going to be asking your opinions.
We can do that.
Okay. I think that's good. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Thank you, Carter.
Help out how I can as well. Right.
I will also be reaching out to everyone about volunteers to help present and potential sponsorships.
Sounds great. Any other things on your list, long list, Carter?
Well, I would say at the next meeting, we do not have any cases scheduled in terms of administrative alternates. So I think that's a good opportunity to do a little training. Because in December, we will have our first design alternate that will be what we used to look at as as an administrative alternate. So I think it's going to be a building massing request. So it'd be good to probably go over the changes in the code now, because we did change some of the standards, not just the process. We've also been contacted by our transportation folks, and they suggested taking a look at some of the new street cross sections that were approved recently as text changes, because we'll probably be seeing more of those. So trying to get someone from their shop to come in and talk about those new sections to give you some orientation, you know, outside of a case. So I mean, they are kind of radical compared to what we currently have in the code. So I think doing a little training would be good, and I want to try to get David Moore with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance to come talk about the Legacy project.
Good idea.
Great. Awesome. We've got people dropping off. Anything else from the commission? Anything coming up that anybody wants to throw out there?
I will just throw out there, I'm going to be, not MIA, but I'll be absent for the next couple of meetings. I'm expecting my first kid here in November. So I will be back in the not too distant future with a new occupant in the household. So I will see you guys.
All right.
Awesome. Congrats.
Congrats.
Early congrats and get sleep now.
Do you know if boy, girl?
It's a girl,
Oh.
which I'm very happy about.
Very nice.
Excellent. Catherine, do you have anything to report from your end?
Nope, nothing new.
Okay. Excellent. Well, that being said, I'm going to hit the gavel. We'll see y'all in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. Thanks, Catherine.